Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Richard Strauss's Die Liebe der Danae, which was shown at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. The conductor was Sebastian Weigler, the production was done by Kirsten Harms, the set design was done by Bernd Tomowski, the costumes were done by Dorothea Katzer, the lights were done by Manfred Voss, the assistant director was Silke Zense, the chorus master was William Spaulding, and the dramaturgy was handled by Andreas K.W. Meyer. Now, Die Liebe der Danae was Richard Strauss's second to the last opera before he composed his final opera, Capriccio. It first premiered in 1944 with having the likes of Hans Hotta as Jupiter, Horst Taubmann as Midas, and Viorica Ursuleac singing the title heroine, and Clemens Krauss was on the podium. 8 years later, it had its public premiere in 1952 with the likes of Paul Schöffler as Jupiter, Josef Gostitz as Midas, and Annelies Küpper as Danae. However, this opera has been rarely performed and is not as popular as the likes of Salome, Elektra, Rosenkavalier, Ariadne auf Naxos, Arabella, and Die Frau ohne Schatten, and Capriccio. It's mainly been performed in certain regional opera companies and a lot of opera houses in Europe. So the fact that this was definitely a very, very underrated Richard Strauss opera, and the fact that it's been quite obscure from time to time, is sort of the reason why it hasn't really been that performed. But I think it's also because of the fact that this opera, much like a lot of the mythological operas, is very extremely difficult to stage because, first of all, you really need to have a lot of resources to really make the stage just burst out in terms of the overall production. And even though this opera has been quite obscure from time to time, it's nonetheless attracted a lot of spinto sopranos to really sing this taxing yet rewarding title heroine. And I'll get to the vocal challenges of this role later when I talk about the singers. So this opera, even though it had, well, a definitely obscure history or performance history, it still managed to really attract a lot of sopranos. And it also attracted a lot of baritones to sing the likes of Jupiter and a lot of tenors to sing the equally thankless part of Midas. So it's definitely a cult classic of a Richard Strauss opera, even though it's been rarely performed. Now that that's out of the way, let's get on to what I thought about the production, the singers, and the conducting. Now, traditional productions of Die Liebe der Danae would usually set this opera in ancient Greece. But the production I saw last night was set in the 1940s and 1950s, where you have the men in tuxedos and the women in gowns, and there is a piano in the center of the stage. And we see the piano being taken up by some Velcros, and throughout the entire opera, it is basically suspended. And then we even see Danae coming in looking very radiant alongside her maid Zante. And we see papers falling down from the heavens as if though they were like pieces of a manuscript. And I don't know what the manuscript was supposed to be. I don't know if they were supposed to be notes or a libretto, but I think they were definitely like words from a libretto from this particular opera. And especially considering the fact that this production also makes a great use of the lighting. When you see the papers falling down, you have this really, really wonderful shade of blue, which was so heavenly that I was practically enthralled. And when Jupiter, aka Midas, comes in, he is dressed in gold and he really looked like a god. And even the final act of the opera, where you see everything in shambles, you really get the feeling that this is definitely what happened after like the likes of World War II, or even the likes of a lot of the warring times that have happened between the 1940s and the 1950s. So you really get a sense of just like the fantasy elements mixed in with what life used to be like in the 1940s in terms of its style, in terms of its history, and in terms of the overall scope of the production. And then the costumes were just fabulous. First of all, I really love Danae's costumes. She first comes in the stage with her white gown, and when she receives her dress from Chrysophor, in actuality Midas, she wears them like a princess. She really looked like an angelic princess that I was totally enthralled. And even in the last moment of the opera, even though she had a blackish gown and a robe to cover that, I thought she looked really, really heavenly as well. Interestingly, I thought the costumes for the four kings and the four queens were really, really great. With the four kings, you have them wearing tuxedos, and with the four queens, you have them dressed up in white gowns, white shoes, and platinum blonde wigs. And I thought that was rather cute. And then with Jupiter, you have him in white makeup. And at first, he enters the stage wearing all gold, but then he has this white tuxedo, and he's basically dressed in white with like white hair or silvery white hair in general. And then we have Mercure also dressed in white, even though a lot of productions would usually have him in a winged helmet with winged shoes, just the typical look for Mercury. So I thought that this production was very much well done in terms of its lighting, costumes, and just the overall feel of this opera. I definitely enjoyed it from beginning to end. And now we get to the singers, starting off with the title heroine Danae, sung by Manuela Ull. Now, Manuela Ull has been a singer I've been wanting to hear on stage for many, many times. And I was absolutely interested in the huge scope of repertoire she has. She has sung the dramatic coloratura role of Violetta from La Traviata, the more lyric soprano role of the Countess from Marriage of Figaro, and has even sung some more spinto roles like Salome from Salome, Chrysothemis from Electra, the Marschallin from Rosenkavalier, Arabella from Arabella, and even the Empress from Frau ohne Schatten, and of course, Danae. I have also heard a couple of clips of her on YouTube, and I thought that her voice was very much beautiful to listen to. The thing about Danae is that you really need a spinto soprano who can be able to navigate a lot of the high notes, and it's a very thankless role because it has a very high tessitura. No, it's not like the tessitura that you would expect from a coloratura soprano. I'm talking about those C sharps that she has to sing, the C's that she has to sing, and even the B's that she has to sing. It's basically almost like the Empress from Frau ohne Schatten, but it's not as drastically, well, huge in terms of its vocalities. But still, the fact that you really need to have a very well-conditioned voice from beginning to end, and not to mention have an equally great acting presence on stage, is definitely a huge challenge that a lot of interpreters of Danae has faced. So, with that said, Manuela Ull really embodied the character well. First of all, she has this very fine silvery soprano voice, which she was able to sing over the orchestra very well, and managed to hit all those high notes with such agility and with such beauty that I was practically just blown off the edge of my seat. She really looked so angelic on stage when she entered, when she accepted this gift from Chrysophea, aka Midas. And when you see her in despair, you could really feel everything that she's going through. I thought she did very fabulously in terms of her theatricality and in terms of her voice, which is a very fine and very gorgeous instrument that she used to her advantage from beginning to end. She used that silvery voice as if though that it was just a day in a park. She did very fabulously as Danae that I really felt like she was the star of the evening. Singing the role of Yupita was a veteran singer I have been hearing a lot of from time to time and have grown to be impressed with the huge breadth of work that he has sung in. And that is Mark Delavan. Now, Mark Delavan has been a singer I have been following from time to time. I've been hearing him mostly on YouTube and was actually very impressed with the huge range of repertoire that he has. He sings the dramatic baritone repertoires of Rigoletto and Simon Boccanegra and Scarpia, and even to the more bass baritone role of Wotan from the Ring tetralogy. I thought to myself, man, this guy is probably going to be very impressive throughout the evening. And the thing about Yupita is that you really need a baritone who has been specializing in a lot of the dramatic baritone roles, like Telramund, The Dutchman, Alberich, Fritz Kottner, Kurvenaar, Johanna Ann, Mandrika, Scarpia, Escamillo, Urias, Giorgio Germont, Monforte, Nabucco, Falstaff, and Amonasro, just to name a few. Now, with hearing Mark Delavan live on stage, I was totally blown away with his performance. First of all, he has that very round, rich baritone voice. The type of voice I have been longing to hear live on stage, because it seems as though that I've been hearing this type of baritone voice mostly on YouTube, in courtesy of the likes of Gian Giacomo Guelfi, pretty much being the best example of how to use a very ebullient, round, rich, dramatic baritone voice. So when Mark Delavan came on stage, I was like, wow, this is a gentleman I have been wanting to hear on stage for quite some time. And of course, I also have a lot of favorite dramatic baritones as well, like Ekkehard Blaschiha and Eike Wilhelm Schulte, Josef Metternich, Gian Giacomo Guelfi, Anselmo Consalni, and René Bianco, and Ernest Blanc, just to name a few. But to hear Mark Delavan on stage was just an absolute treat. He really embodied the character of Jupiter very well, that I totally bought his performance as the king of the gods, and he very much made the other singers look, well, totally okay compared to him. But he really embodied his character well. He has this type of fierceness that he embodied. He has this type of grandeur that he was able to play off of. And his stentorian, dramatic baritone voice was just so distinctive in its execution that I practically bought him as the king of the gods, Jupiter. Singing the role of Midas was yet another veteran singer, Raymond Very, who has been very well known singing a huge range of roles, from the lyric tenor repertoire to the more spinto repertoire, and even to some forays in the Helden tenor repertoire. The thing about Midas is that you really do need a spinto or full lyric tenor to really navigate those notes very well. Any tenor who has sung the likes of Arnaud from Guillaume Tell, Eleazar from La Juive, Don José from Carmen, Sanson from Sanson et Dalila, Cavaradossi from Cavalieri Rusticana, Alfredo from Traviata, Hernani from Hernani, Carlo Moore from Masnadieri, Ismaele from Nabucco, Luge from Rheingold, Lohengrin, Walter von Stolzing, Erik from Die Fliegende Holländer, Herodes from Salome, and Matteo from Arabella, and even Egist from Electra, just to name a few. he embodied his character very well. And the fact that he's done a lyric tenor career, the fact that he's done a spinto tenor career, and the fact that he's also been foraying into the more Hellentinwa pots is just a testament to really see how versatile Raymond Very really is. And he has a very fine stentorian sound that he was able to put a great amount of emphasis on, and his stage presence was charming and quite heroic as well, singing the role of the handmaiden of Danae, Zante, was Adriana Ferfecka. Now, as opposed to Danae's more spinto tone, Zante needs to have a lot more of a lyrical tone. She has been attracting a lot of light lyric and full lyric sopranos who have really made the best out of this extremely thankless character because, first of all, Zante only appears in the first act. The next few acts, she's not there anymore. Quite thankless. But she has attracted a lot of singers, the likes of Annie Falbemeyer, Andrea Traubot, and even Lisa Saffer. A lot of them being either full lyric sopranos, lyric coloratura sopranos, or even that of like really light spinto sopranos. So with Adriana Ferfecka as Zante, I really have to say her chemistry with Manuela Ull as the Danae was absolutely wonderful. She continues to have a very fine and pleasant sound that she was able to make a great use of. And the fact that she's also my age, being, well, even though she's like 3 months older than me, I was totally blown away. This is definitely a talent I want to see a lot more on stage. And she is definitely very wonderful in this really thankless character role. First of all, she continues to have a very fine, very full-toned lyric soprano voice, which she was able to make a great use of. And this is one of those times that I've seen her in a more supporting character as opposed to some of the tinier roles that she's been doing in the Deutsche Oper Berlin. She really embodied her role very well, that even though she only appeared in the first act, I have to say I bought it. I totally bought her as this really sweet and very gentle and very much sisterly Zante to Danae. And Manuela Uz and Adriana Ferfecka's voices blended very well in their duet. Singing the role of King Pollux was the superb character tenor Burkhard Ulrich. Now, Pollux has been attracting a lot of lyric tenors and even a lot of character tenors because usually the big challenge for a role like this is to really sing this role and not to really just bark it. And a lot of tenors have had a great success with this extremely thankless character. In terms of the roles that any Pollux has sung, a lot of Polluxes in terms of the light lyric tenor side have been singing the likes of Tamino, Pedrillo, the Duke from Rigoletto, Edgardo from Lucia, the Count Almaviva from Barber of Seville, Ramiro from Cenerentola, Fro from Rheingold, the helmsman from The Flying Dutchman, the young sailor from Tristan und Isolde, David from Die Meistersinger von Nuremberg, and even Baroncelli from Rienzi. And in terms of the character tenor side, a lot of character tenors have also made their mark singing this extremely thankless character. Character tenors who have sung the likes of Mime from Rheingold and Siegfried, the Captain and the Idiot from Wozzeck, and many other roles for a character tenor. And I thought that Burkhard Ulrich still continues to really deliver the goods in terms of his acting and in terms of his singing. He has a very fine voice, and his stage presence, as to be expected, is equally well done, and it has a certain charm to this character. Singing the equally thankless role of Merkur was Thomas Blondel. Now, Merkur also does need a lyrical and even a spinto tenor voice to really make the best out of this extremely thankless character, because he only appears in the third act of this opera. And I thought that with Thomas Blondel as Merkur, he was able to make the best out of such an extremely thankless character, helped with such a fine stage presence and with a very fine tenor voice. And then we have the roles of the four kings, sung by Clemens Bieber, Paul Kaufmann, Thomas Lehmann, and Alexei Botnashuk. Now, with the four kings, you really need two character tenors, one character baritone, lyric baritone, character bass, and one character bass. And the challenge for these four singers is that they really need to have their voices really blended well. And I thought that with Clemens Bieber's lyric tenor voice, Paul Kaufmann's character tenor voice, Tom Lehmann's more lyrical baritone voice, and with Alexei Botnashuk's basso voice, I thought they were able to blend very, very well, and their chemistry on stage was excellent. Singing the roles of the four queens were, respectively, as Europa, Nicole Haslett, Semele, Martina Weichenbach, Alkmene, Rebecca Jo Loeb, and Leda, Katharina Peetz. Let's start off with what I thought about Nicole Haslett as Europa. I have been wanting to hear this wonderful singer on stage, and out of all the four queens, I really have to say that Nicole Haslett really stood out. First of all, she has this very, very sweet and delicate and just lovely, light lyric coloratura soprano voice. She was able to sing with such heavenly and golden tones that I totally bought her as this extremely thankless character. She soared really well over the orchestra, and she has a very excellent and very darling technique, and her stage presence was equally just wonderful. And then we have Martina Weichenbach as Semele, in which she really sings her part very well, all thanks to her trademark lyric soprano voice. Rebecca Jo Loeb as Alkmene, who has a very fine timbre and really, really was a great actress, and Katharina Peetz, making her debut role at the Deutsche Oper Berlin as Leda. She has a very fine voice, and her stage presence and her chemistry with her three compatriots were very well done. And the thing about the four queens is that you really need a really light soprano to sing the role of Europa, and then a light lyric soprano to sing Semele, a lyric mezzo to sing Alkmene, and then another lyric mezzo or even that of a lyric contralto to sing the likes of Alkmene, or excuse me, Leda. And you really need to have their voices blend well together. So overall, I'm really impressed with the singing. It's excellently executed, and special kudos goes to Manuela Uhl for embodying the title heroine very well, and even the likes of Mark Delavan and Raymond Very for really working well off of Manuela Uhl and for being singers that really stood well on their own. And the conducting done by Sebastian Weigle was really well done, because, as you know, Sebastian Weigle is no stranger to the likes of Wagner, Strauss, von Weber, and many, many other Germanic composers. The fact that he was able to really take time to really, really invest in the text, in the music, is definitely a testament to his artistry. And the chorus of the Deutsche Oper Berlin and even the Statisterie were also well done as well. So overall, I was impressed with this opera in particular. I was impressed with the singing, I was impressed with the production, and I was impressed with the conducting and the chorus. If you haven't seen this opera yet, please go check it out, and you can even check out this opera in your local opera companies. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in later tonight where I review Puccini's Manon Lescaut, which will be shown at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. So until then, have a nice day, everybody.